The sound of a slap is unmistakable. It's not like in the movies. It's a sharp, ugly crack that cuts through every other noise and leaves a dead, ringing silence in its wake. In the suffocating air of courtroom 4B, that sound just echoed off the wood-paneled walls, and for a single frozen moment, time stopped. Everyone stared at the towering, red-faced cop, Officer Miller, his hand still raised, and at the woman he had just struck. Maya Washington, a public defender, standing alone, her cheek blazing red, her eyes filled not with tears, but with a fire so cold it could burn steel. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry out. She just stood there, a pillar of defiance in a cheap suit, the embodiment of a system that had tried to grind her down her entire life. Miller sneered, his voice a low growl that dripped with contempt. "You should learn to shut your mouth, little lady. Know your place." His partner, Russo, chuckled beside him, a vulture ready to pick at the scraps. The judge, an old withered man named Thompson, who looked like he'd been carved from a block of dusty law books, simply sighed, annoyed by the disruption. "Miss Washington," he droned, "if you cannot control the proceedings, I will hold you in contempt." Contempt. That was the word. Miller felt contempt. The judge felt contempt. The whole room felt contempt for her client, a terrified 19-year-old kid named David, who was being framed for a crime he didn't commit. Miller thought he had just won. He thought he had put this loud, defiant black woman in her place. He, the judge, and everyone in that room had no idea what was about to happen. They thought they were looking at a powerless victim. They were wrong. They were looking at the future, and in less than 30 seconds, their entire world was about to be turned upside down. This story isn't just about a courtroom drama. It's about a hidden power, a quiet promise, and a reckoning that had been brewing for 20 long years. If you believe that the deepest injustices demand the most epic comebacks, you're going to want to see this through to the end. Hit that subscribe button because you are about to witness a moment of justice so pure, it will give you chills. It all started 3 months earlier. David, a scholarship kid, working 2 jobs to help his mom, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Officers Miller and Russo, 2 cops with a reputation for being bullies with badges, needed a quick arrest to close a high-profile robbery case. They found David walking home, tossed him in their car, and manufactured a story. They claimed he confessed. They claimed they found evidence. It was all a lie, a neat little package tied up to ruin a young man's life. And the only person standing between David and a decade in prison was Maya Washington. The system had given her nothing. No resources, no support, just a caseload, so heavy it was designed to make her fail. While the prosecution had a team of lawyers and investigators, Maya had a cramped office, a broken coffee machine, and a fire in her soul that refused to be extinguished. For weeks, she worked around the clock, fueled by caffeine and a righteous anger. She knew David was innocent. She could see it in his eyes. More than that, she saw her own brother in him, her own cousins. She saw every kid from her neighborhood who was one bad cop away from becoming a statistic. This wasn't just a case for her. This was a crusade. Her father's words echoed in her head, a mantra he'd repeated since she was a little girl. "Maya," he used to say, his hands rough from a lifetime of labor, "in this world for you, good isn't good enough. You have to be smarter. You have to be tougher. You have to be so damn brilliant that they can't ignore you. You have to be the one who changes the rules." She had lived by that code, graduated top of her class, passed the bar on her first try. She had chosen to be a public defender, to stand in the trenches, to be the shield for the defenseless. And now, she was facing her greatest test. She found the crack in their story at 3 a.m., buried in a mountain of paperwork. A single line in a supplementary report. Miller and Russo had claimed they found the stolen goods in David's backpack right after the arrest. But Maya found the property log timestamp from the evidence locker. It showed the items weren't logged until 2 hours after David was already in a holding cell. 2 hours, an impossible gap. 2 hours was more than enough time for them to plant the evidence. It was the smoking gun. It was the lie that would unravel everything. Back in the courtroom, that's exactly what happened. Maya, with the precision of a surgeon, had laid it all out. She presented the evidence logs. She exposed the inconsistencies in their testimonies. She caught them in a web of their own lies. Russo crumbled on the stand, sweating and stammering. Miller, however, just got angrier. His face got darker. His jaw clenched tighter with every question. Maya asked. He saw his power, his authority, his entire world being dismantled by this woman who wasn't supposed to be smart enough, who wasn't supposed to be strong enough to challenge him. When Maya rested her case, her closing argument wasn't just a legal summary. It was a declaration of war against a broken system. These officers didn't just arrest an innocent man, she said, her voice ringing with clarity and power, her eyes locked on the jury. They committed a crime. They abused their power. They violated their oath, and they tried to sacrifice a young man's future for their own convenience. The only thing David is guilty of is being a black man in a world that too often sees his skin color as probable cause. That's when Miller snapped. He saw the jury's faces. He knew it was over. His career was over. His freedom was in jeopardy. In a blind rage, he lunged from his seat at the prosecution's table. "You bitch," he roared. Before the bailiffs could even react, he was in front of her, and then came the slap. The ugly, echoing crack that silenced the world. As Miller stood over her, breathing like a caged animal, and the old judge fumbled for his gavel, something incredible happened. The heavy, ornate door to the side of the judge's bench swung open. A woman entered, flanked by 2 state marshals. She was in her 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an aura of absolute authority. She was Justice Amelia Davies, the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court. She surveyed the scene, the shocked jury, the cowering David, the enraged cop, and Maya standing tall, her cheekbone already starting to swell. Justice Davies's voice was calm, but it carried the force of a tidal wave. "Bailiffs," she said, her words cutting through the tension, "place Officer Miller under arrest for assault in this courtroom right now." Miller's jaw dropped. "What? You can't." "I can," she said, her eyes like chips of ice. "And I am. Officer Russo, you will be detained for perjury. Your badges, now." The bailiffs, who had been frozen in shock, snapped into action. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut filled the courtroom. It was the sound of a paradigm shifting. Miller and Russo, who had walked in like kings, were now being led away in disgrace. The old Judge Thompson stood up, sputtering, "Justice Davies, what is the meaning of this intrusion?" Justice Davies turned her gaze to him, and for the first time Judge Thompson looked small. "The meaning, Judge Thompson, is that I was here to observe your final case before your retirement. It seems I came just in time to witness a felony and a complete breakdown of judicial control. Your retirement is effective immediately. This courtroom is no longer yours." She then looked at Maya. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. She walked over, not to the judge's bench, but to the small table where a clerk sat. She picked up a folded black robe. She walked back to Maya, who was still standing in the middle of the room, the silent epicenter of the storm. Do you remember what you said to the Judicial Selection Committee, Miss Washington? Justice Davies asked, her voice now warm, for Maya's ears only. You said you didn't want to be a judge to wield power. You wanted to be one to ensure justice was never again a privilege for the few, but a right for all. Maya's eyes widened as the realization hit her, a wave of shock and disbelief. The secret she had held for months, the election she had won, the new life that was supposed to start next week. Justice Davies held up the robe. "Well, Judge-elect Washington," she said, her voice now booming for the entire courtroom to hear, "it appears your term is starting a few days early." The entire courtroom gasped as one. The jury's jaws were on the floor. David's tear-streaked face was a mask of pure astonishment. Justice Davies helped Maya into the robe. It was heavy, the weight of responsibility, the weight of history. Maya walked, slowly, deliberately, past the empty defense table, past the empty prosecution table, and up the steps to the one place she had only ever dreamed of being. She took the judge's seat. She looked out at the faces staring up at her client, David, now looking at her with a dawning, brilliant hope. She looked at the empty chairs where two corrupt cops had sat, and she picked up the gavel. Her first act was not one of vengeance. It was one of pure, unadulterated justice. Her voice, now amplified by the courtroom's acoustics, was firm, clear, and unwavering. "In the case of the state versus David Green," she declared, "all charges are hereby dismissed with prejudice. The record is to be expunged. Mr. Green, you are free to go." She then turned to the district attorney. "I am ordering a full independent investigation into the 15th precinct, specifically into the arrest records of officers Miller and Russo. This court will root out this poison, whatever it takes." That day, Maya Washington didn't just win a case. She took control of the entire game. She became the rule changer her father always knew she could be. She walked into that courtroom a public defender, was assaulted as a black woman, and walked out as the judge who would redefine justice in that city for a generation. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. A testament to the fact that true power isn't about the uniform you wear or the seat you hold. It's about the fire within you, the courage to stand up when you're told to sit down, and the brilliance to be so damn good they have no choice but to see you. And sometimes, if you fight long enough and hard enough, the very seat of power you were fighting against becomes your own.